Welcome, adventurers! What's going on, guys? My name is Cody. This is Taking20, a channel about all things role-playing games. And today, I want to talk to you guys about experience, okay? I want to talk to you about experience points, milestone leveling, how you guys are handling gaining levels in your games, because I think that I may have a better mousetrap, okay? I may have a better solution for you regardless of the system that you are playing in. So that's what I want to talk to you guys about today. I hope you're ready. Let's get started. All right, guys, so let's talk about experience points and leveling up in our games. Because as it stands today, I'm not really crazy about either of the two systems that we have available to us with either chapter leveling or traditional experience points leveling. And this has been something that's kind of been on my mind a while. I've been thinking about there's got to be a better way to level up than these two systems that we have available. Okay, so let's talk about chapter leveling, right? Because I think that at this point today, probably most people are using this system. I can't prove that. I haven't sent out a bunch of surveys, but I really believe that more people are using milestone leveling than they are actual experience points at their table. And there are definitely some flaws, and I definitely have some complaints and gripes about using this system exclusively in my games over the last few years. And the biggest problem that I have with it is that it really diminishes and devalues roleplay that happens at the table. And what I mean by that is that it really diminishes the small things, right? It really devalues the small scenes, the small roleplay that can happen in a game that leads to this awesome character development or a ton of fun at the table. If all you're doing is telling your players that, well, you're not going to progress, you're not going to get any further in the game, you're not going to get any further until you kill this bad guy, until you go finish out this quest for this one guy, specifically this one guy. It doesn't matter all the side quests that you do. It doesn't matter that you've helped the farmer down the road on your way to traveling to the city capital. That doesn't matter. You get to level 11 once you reach the capital. And that's really my biggest bugaboo about chapter leveling, because it really, really devalues completely all of the small things. You know, and I'll even give you an example from a game that I was a player in, where we were in this town and we were ultimately gearing up before we headed off in a different direction to another town. Really, that's the whole plot. That's what we were doing. And we came across this merchant that was being kind of harassed and bothered by this guard. He actually had his cart seized and he was in a bit of a panic. And so we kind of heard this and we went talked to him, and ultimately we went on this wonderful, wonderful roleplay session where we were going about talking to the guards, talking to the people in charge, and we were trying to work to get his cart back. It wasn't a thing where we were drawing swords and attacking people and running out of the town with the cart. We were just genuinely trying to help this merchant, and eventually we ended up, I believe, giving over gold to help him kind of buy his cart back and bribe the guards. And it was this great, great experience. But ultimately, it didn't matter. And while three of us were having a lot of fun getting into the character, we had a player at the table that was like, okay, guys, come on, let's hurry up. Because he was really excited to get to the next level, and he knew that we were going to level up, or he made an assumption probably. I doubt that the Dungeon Master said, you're going to level up when you get to the next point. But ultimately, he was trying to push us forward so that he could level up, so that he could gear up, so that we could continue with a progression of the story. And that is my biggest problem with chapter leveling, is that the small stuff doesn't matter. Side quests, unless you're stopping and getting an item, they don't matter to your character. They don't matter towards progression. And I even think that you can see game designers and publishers becoming aware of that fact, where chapter leveling is becoming so popular with everybody, and that is diminishing the small aspects of roleplay, those small scenes that should be important to a game. And I think you can even see it in Dungeons & Dragons 5e, where Wizards of the Coast took a house rule of inspiration and they just cooked it right into the game, right into the rules for everybody to see, so that Dungeon Masters have a way to reward their players with this inspiration point. But I'll tell you right now, the inspiration point is terrible to your game. It really, really does the opposite effect of I think, what its goal is, where instead of diminishing roleplay, it now diminishes combat, now diminishes the threat. A lot of people have complained as of late that 5e doesn't feel lethal enough once you get past the first few levels. And they're probably right. And I'm betting a lot of those games use inspiration points. And that's one of the reasons why, as far as I'm concerned, it's totally and completely out of my games. And it has been for a while now. I just don't use inspiration points. If somebody's on an airship and they're fighting and being pushed over and knocked off and they fail their save that somebody pushed them off, going back and giving them just a whole extra D20 to re-roll a save, it just completely diminishes the strategy and lethality of the combat, and it diminishes the accomplishment. So I really dislike inspiration, at least how it is in its current form in Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Okay, so let's talk about experience points. So what are some of the cons for running an experience point system where you might be able to reward a group for role-playing and be able to reward them for the small things? Well, first off, it's a little bit of extra work. There's no doubt about that, okay? And I will tell you this, it's only a little bit of extra work, okay? It's really not that bad. And if that's the reason you haven't tried experience points, just take my advice. It's really not that bad. You're going to have maybe 2, maybe 3 combats throughout the night. And ultimately, when you stop and add up the experience points, it kind of gives you a breather to regroup yourselves and some of your players to regroup themselves. And so oftentimes I found that it's really not that bad. It doesn't bog the game down as much as people think it does. Now, another complaint, and this one I think might be a little bit more legitimate, is when you move over to an experience point system, there are things that can happen where you start getting gaps in your players, where maybe a player missed a session, or maybe you want to reward your players for going and helping a merchant get his cart back, but only 2 people are present. Because that actually is what happened in our game. Only 2 of the 4 people were in the middle of doing this, because the rest were shopping throughout town. And so it's really difficult. Now you want to reward those players, but if you do that with experience points, you now have this gap in your party. And if you're not careful, this gap can become a whole level or maybe a whole 2 levels. And now you've got a whole bunch of extra work trying to keep people happy and trying to balance your encounters with not a clean slate, if you will, of players with an even level across the board. So there you go. You can see the problems that neither system is really great. Neither system is really perfect. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a little bit of the good parts of both and try to not totally redesign everything. This is nothing that is groundbreaking here, but it is a way to approach your game with an experience point system that all of your players understand and that all of your players will be able to get behind, and it will still encourage roleplay without the frivolous waste of inspiration points diminishing your combats. And that is to move to an experience-based system that no matter what, everybody is always getting the same experience points. Now, I know a lot of old school players might hate that idea, right? Some people even use experience points where it is a way to make sure that people show up to your games, right? Because you have a big group, and if somebody isn't there, well, they don't get experience points that week. Okay, that I personally would find a different group or be accommodating to that player if it's really not that big a deal to you. But I think that this is the best and smartest system from an all-around approach for your game, regardless of the system that you're running. So let me give you a few points on why I think this is a really solid system and it does, in fact, do the things that I said, where it is encouraging roleplay. So let's go back and take a look at my little example of myself and a buddy helping a merchant get his cart back. So at this point, I mentioned earlier, the party was split, right? You had myself and a buddy helping this merchant get his cart back. I had another player kind of enjoying and really engrossed in and really being a part of the situation, even though his character wasn't present. And then you had the 4th player who was eager to move everything along so that he could level up. Well, with a system like this, we could have had a great time really enjoying the role play, helping the merchant, and that in and of itself would have been enough with a traditional experience point system to reward us. 300 points of experience, 500 points of experience, whatever. With this system, that 500 points of experience would have been for everybody at the table. So the Dungeon Master can look over and say, great job, guys. I love that. That was a lot of fun for me. let's give everybody 500 experience points. So this is shoring up some of the weaknesses with a traditional experience point system, right? Where you're having players build a gap between themselves that are being active in a side quest and players that are not active in a side quest, and it totally eliminates that. Everybody at the table is progressing through roleplay, which I think is a net positive to your game. And the Dungeon Master didn't have to give us an inspiration point, right? So combat or a save against a poison, something like that, those still matter just as much as they would have if you didn't have a get out of jail free card. Also with this system, it's really easy to reward your group in thinking critically and coming up with solutions that don't involve being murder hobos. So if your group comes up against some goblins and they can see them off in the distance, ultimately they may be trying to get past the goblins. So they may come up with a solution where they stealth around them and they throw rocks on the other side or whatever. That is still something that I would absolutely reward experience to the whole group. Rogue comes across a trap and disarms it. The whole group gets experience points. So you constantly have this feel, right, of progression and progression and progression and excitement. The players become engrossed in every little thing that's going on. Every little storyline, every little side quest, every little adventure and challenge that they can come up against. They're always excited because every time they complete something, whether that is through killing things with the sword or not, they are progressing their characters and still building towards something. So instead of rushing through this town to get to the next town or to kill the next bad guy, or to not know what's going on and be like, hey, we haven't leveled in 3 or 4 sessions. I'm sure you Dungeon Masters have heard that, where you've had players stop and ask you, hey, can we level? Can we level? We haven't leveled in a long time. Is it time to level? So you don't have those same problems with this that you do with chapter leveling or just a traditional experience where you might have those gaps in level with your player. So there you go, guys. Nothing incredibly groundbreaking, right? But still a very solid system that helps put Dungeon Masters and Game Masters in the right frame of mind with how they are trying to reward their players and hopefully a way to help your players engage more in roleplay and engage more in activities that don't just involve being murder hobos. What do you guys think? Is this something that you love? Is this something that you hate? Are you going to use this? You have no desire to move over to experience points and give up your chapter leveling. Do you think this solves the problem with inspiration devaluing combat, or do you think that there's not really a big problem there anyways? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm definitely going to be reading the comments and responding to a lot of people here on this video. I want to discuss this a little bit further with you guys. If this is your first time here and you love role-playing games as much as I do, I'd love to have you subscribe. Every week I'll be putting out new videos on DM tips, player tips, tutorials, and more, so if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, just hit that subscribe button down below and come join us. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Cody, and may your games be filled with awesome memories and even better friends. I'll catch you guys next time.